But remember, you can set healthy boundaries that you don't have to be at every event physically. We have lots of activities now that you can do via Zoom or other social media that you can have that physical boundary in place.
And it addresses what you said earlier, how Jesus had to steal away. Sometimes you just have to have that physical boundary. I love you guys, but I have to be physically distant from you right now because I have to take care of me. And like you said, even when people perceive that, now we're not saying be selfish. We are saying be Christian-like. But there are times, because there are people who feel like I have to be in the mix all the time. I have to be there. I have to be there. And I used to hear this quote, and I hope it doesn't offend anyone, but when I was a child, it says, one monkey don't stop no show. Yes, grammatically incorrect and everything, but one monkey don't stop no show. Because we sometimes feel like, oh, if I'm not there, it's not going to happen, or it's not going to be successful. But that's not true, because oftentimes there are teams of people, and as much as you feel your input is valued, if it's going to impact you taking care of yourself, as she said earlier, sometimes you may not have to attend, you may not be able to attend that event because you are taking care of yourself. Like we said, even there were times when Jesus said, much as I love everyone, I just got to get away. I just got to get away. I'm coming back, but I have to get away. So keep that in mind. And we're going to talk a little bit about the family boundaries. Now, this is important because we said we're going to give you real talk, okay? Real talk. And this might be offensive to some. Only if you are guilty will you be offended. If you're not guilty, you shouldn't be offended. And hopefully, for all people, it should be helpful. I hope. And we're going to talk about family boundaries because this is one which gets blurred a lot. Yes, it gets blurred. And as counselors, we talk to people, and this boundary has been blurred in quite a few relationships. So talk a little bit about family boundaries. This time of year especially, we're talking about warm weather. It's it's not really post-COVID, but they're loosening the restrictions. And so people are getting out. People are happy. Of course, summertime seems to bring out a smile on people's faces anyway, warm weather. But people are having family reunions. There is no such thing as a perfect family reunion. They're not realistic because we want to reiterate this, talking about family values, or the boundaries, not just the values, but the boundaries, because you may have in-laws and it may not be the most loving relationship. And all of you people come together, hopefully for a good time, but things happen, life happens. And it's like you still have to understand that I have boundaries. When you come together, doesn't mean you can't have a good time. It just means that you have boundaries. Because if I do not necessarily, which is not my case, but if I don't have a good relationship with my in-laws, then knowing this prior to going, then I need to understand, I need to establish some boundaries so that there is a positive environment, a positive atmosphere for all, not just me, but for all. So the perfect family reunion, that's not realistic. Hopefully a good family reunion is in your future. Establishing your own boundaries as a new family, now that's important. We know you tend to take the values that you get from your family. We mentioned this a lot in our premarital classes. You bring those things that you learned growing up with you as an adult into your new family. That's part of who you are. But as a new family, you and your new family, your current family, you need to establish some boundaries. So you can't just simply say, oh, well, this is what we always did. This is what my family always did. Because guess what? When you're saying that, you have someone else, the other part of you who makes the whole, they're saying, this is what we did, this is what my family did, and sometimes it's not always the same. So how do you get to the point where you say, okay, it's not about my family, it's not about your family, it's about our family. Mesh some of those things that you were able to bring values from your family, but please keep in mind that you need to establish your own family boundaries for your new family. then oftentimes there's less conflict because guess what? At least the family, your current new family, you're on the same page. Okay? Keeping it real. Now, many parents don't understand the leave and cleave that was discussed in the book of Genesis. As we all know, the very first book of the Bible. So, understanding leave and cleave, many parents don't seem to have a full grasp on that. Because when they're demanding of their child of things not taking into account that their child is now married and has a husband or wife, and they're oftentimes asking maybe inappropriate questions about the marital finances, the family's finances, the sex life, those are not appropriate. And if you're out there and you're doing that, please stop it. But if you are one of those saying, "Oh God, I just need for someone to help me. I know this is not appropriate for my parents to be asking me." No, some parents, because they love you so much, it is difficult for them. But now the parents don't leave you. You leave, and then your parents, and you cleave to your spouse. So you have to understand there are boundaries just for you and your mate. So we strongly encourage you to get a good understanding of the leave and cleave, but it kind of goes back to before. Sometimes the problems that are created, we want to blame others instead of taking responsibility for ourselves. You are the only one who can establish those boundaries. As Tinder said earlier, sometimes they may not like it or they may feel hurt, but you have to do what is necessary, and eventually they will begin to honor and respect those boundaries. And if they don't respect them, hopefully they will honor them. If they don't honor them, then it is up to you. It is up to you to address them. But as a family, you need to have those boundaries in place because sometimes parents, some not all, some of them really go beyond the boundaries because they feel like you're still their child and they can ask you anything, which we understand is not the correct answer. And then setting boundaries with your family is not unloving. It's okay. Set some boundaries. They will be okay because they already have a relationship with you and they love you. But once again, if you don't have boundaries, people will take you as far as you allow them to go.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about marriage boundaries. Individual boundaries are still very much important in a marriage. You need to discuss with your mate the boundaries as you see them in your relationship, especially when you grew up probably in two different styles of home. What may have been acceptable in one household may not have been acceptable in another household. So you kind of need to make sure that you set some boundaries that will work for you even in your marriage. You can't assume that his family did some of the same things that your family did. Both partners need to be willing to recognize and honor the other person's boundaries. That is a part of the marriage relationship that we talk about a lot in our premarital class, the difference between acceptance and tolerance. So you need to make sure that in this lifelong marriage relationship that those boundaries are put in place for acceptance and not just for tolerance. Because we know after a while, after you've tolerated something for a certain amount of time, you're going to end up having some type of explosion, which may not be in the best interest of the relationship. So it's important to honor each other's boundaries. And boundaries in relationships are designed to strengthen your bond, not to tear it down. Because in a marriage, we want to have that open communication. Having that open communication will let you work together in establishing those boundaries that will be beneficial for both partners in the relationship and not a one-sided kind of thing.
And I love you saying that because boundaries are great to have even in your, you say, oh, it's my husband's my wife, so we're cool out there. No, because if you don't have boundaries, you tend to have more conflict. And
Yes.
sometimes you say, I just don't want to hurt his feelings. I don't want to hurt her feelings. But you tend to have more conflict. And oftentimes the results over a period of time, the results are negative.
Yes, they tend to go south instead of north. We have this little quote that I found that setting boundaries is a way of caring for myself. It doesn't make me mean. It doesn't make me selfish. It doesn't make me uncaring, because I don't do these things your way because I care about me as well. So we have to make sure that it's not necessarily to hurt another person, but it's to keep me healthy and in a healthy place. So when we look at boundaries, and there are several benefits for setting boundaries, I just want to point out some of those benefits of setting boundaries. One of the most important for me is it wards off burnout. I tend to overdo it, and I tend to not be able to say no. But my husband has helped me to set some boundaries so that I do not create a burnout situation. And I have been in that position before. And it's not a good place to be in, because you're not effective in any area of your life once you get to that burnout state. It improves your emotional health. It improves your relationships. Clear expectations for others. So others will not be expecting you to do things that they want you to do that you don't feel comfortable in doing. So that is a great benefit of having boundaries. It decreases stress. When you're not having to figure out how you're going to do 20 things in the next hour, your stress level will decrease. I know, I've been there. Improved self-care capabilities. It allows you to have more time to take care of you.
Yes.
Respect from others and self-respect. That is very important for other people to recognize you as an individual and to respect that. It promotes autonomy, and all these things together makes you a healthier, happier person. And this is just, a few of the benefits of setting boundaries.
And following along with those setting boundaries, we're talking about things, and I want you to focus on this for a moment. Things outside of your control and things inside of your control. Things that I have the ability to control. For let's start with things outside of your control. Because in talking with the gentleman this morning, I really talked to him very seriously about looking at things outside of your control, because we realize that there are certain things that impact us that we can't control. We cannot control. Let's start with other people's mistakes. We don't have to personalize or take that on and wear that on our shoulders, weighting us down, because those are other people's mistakes. Other people's feelings. How she feels, you say, oh, but I have control over that. I can really go and make her day. And sometimes that may be true. You can say something that just really uplifts an individual, but guess what? You don't have control of that, because at the end of the day, she gets to choose how that impacts her day. Yes, even though you were the tool used, she makes the decision if I want that to really positively impact my day. How people feel, that's beyond our control. Other people's ideas that they may have, that's beyond your control. Other people's behavior, this is a biggie, because you have to understand that's outside of the realm of what you can control. And I know that is frustrating, because I tell people, they say, oh, no, no, no. I think about when my parents, when I was a child, and parents, we do this. Yes, we try to guide our children and help them to behave a certain way. But guess what? That really is, parents, I can fix that. But no, technically, we then run into children and we say, okay, they're not the norm because they don't submit to the parents' authority and that discipline. Because I know of a young man, bless his heart, God rest his soul, when I was a child, I just never knew anyone like him. And Jeffrey. And Jeffrey was just as tough as a nail. It's like Jeffrey stayed in trouble at school. They would get. Do you think Jeffrey's behavior was curtailed? No, it wasn't. We just thought Jeffrey was just so different, was so strange, because he was determined, for whatever reasons, he was going to do what he wanted to do. I don't care what the school said they were going to, what kind of consequence or punishment they were going to offer. It did not faze Jeffrey. So they couldn't control his behavior. He controlled that, and he let them know that very clearly. Other people's play, how other people use their words. These are things outside of control. I don't personally, we talked about this earlier, we had this gentleman and I, how we don't like people using, profanity, and certainly not we said the Lord's name in vain, but I don't get to control them not using that. I can only control how I respond to it. And of course, other people's actions. Those are things beyond our control. Now we want to talk a little bit about things that I can control within the scope of what I have control over. And those are my words. I can control my words. I can control their words, but I can control my words. I can control my actions, how I act, and my behavior. I can control my behavior, my efforts. That's within me to determine how much effort I want to put forth. I mean, because if you're a hardworking person, and to work with someone who isn't, that's challenging, but you can't control their efforts. Or especially if you've ever had to work with someone on a team project or something, whether it be work, school, or just even in your home. It's challenging, but you cannot control their efforts. Now, my mistakes, I can control my mistakes. I have the ability to correct my mistakes. I can advise someone else how to correct theirs if I know the solution, but it's still up to them whether or not they receive my advice. So those are some of the things and my ideas that I can control, because they're my ideas. They're generated from me. I can alter them or whatever. I can't alter someone else's idea because I don't like their idea. So if we can understand, as a part of us looking at our behavior and how we want to establish boundaries, then we have to understand within the boundaries what we have control over and what we don't have control over. Okay? And Tindra gave you a quote a few moments ago, and I have one that I too want to give, and it reads, it's by Lydia H. Hall. Healthy boundaries are not walls. Healthy boundaries are not walls. They are the gates and fences that allow you to enjoy the beauty of your own garden. So what's within those boundaries, it allows you to just enjoy that beauty of because all that goes on in the world around us, I know people who just internalize that, and they find it difficult to simply even exist because there's so much going on outside the scope of their garden. So we're saying, what's within your garden, enjoy the beauty of what's in your garden. If you see some weeds, then weed it out. And then if you see you need to plant some flowers or some trees or whatever to beautify your garden, we're talking in a literal sense, but plant them. But even in the general sense, whatever within the scope of what you can control, your boundaries, they're not walls. You're just saying, as she said, it's kind of like with our geographical areas. It doesn't mean you can't come and go. There are boundaries between the United States and Mexico. Clearly, we know this. If no one knew it, they ought to know it now after the last 4+ years. And there's a boundary. There's a wall potentially being built. But guess what? People can come and go, and you don't have to be illegal. You can go to Mexico. You just have to go through the correct channels, through the ports and through all of that. You have to go through the correct channels, but you can go. But still, there are boundaries that separate the United States from Mexico. And guess what? It shows that there are differences, but then within the realm of Mexico, there's beautiful. Within the realm of the United States of America, there's beauty. So let's keep that in mind. That was a quote by Miss Lydia Hall.
Well, we thank you for tuning in to our podcast for this month on setting boundaries. And if you would like additional information, please just email us. There's our contact information. We are here to serve and to provide more information for you. Just email us. That's our contact information. Thank you so much for joining us for our podcast on boundaries.
Let's just talk for a minute. Let's just share.